The South Atlantic was eerily quiet on the afternoon of the 17th of December, year 1939. Out in the River Plate estuary, a German warship lay burning on the muddy bottom, her final explosions echoing across Montevideo harbor. This was the Admiral Graf Spee, once one of Hitler's secretive pocket battleships, now scuttled by her own captain before the watching eyes of tens of thousands. These ships had been Germany's answer to the Treaty of Versailles, powerful commerce raiders designed to punch far above their weight. They carried the firepower of a battleship, the range of an ocean liner, and the speed to outrun most pursuers. But in the end, each of these so-called Panzerschiffe, the Deutschland, Admiral Scheer and Admiral Graf Spee, met destruction not in glorious duels at sea, but through air raids, blockades, and desperate scuttling. This is their story, the rise and annihilation of Hitler's pocket battleships. The Deutschland-class ships were a bold attempt to bend treaty restrictions. Officially classified as armored ships under the 10,000-ton limit, they in truth displaced closer to 14,000 to 16,000 tons when fully loaded. Each measured about 610 feet long and shared the same sleek raider's profile. They were powered entirely by diesel, an innovation almost unheard of in the year 1932. 4 massive engines drove 2 shafts with 53,000 horsepower, pushing them to 28 knots. Not as fast as destroyers, but fast enough to outrun most cruisers and slip away from battleships. More importantly, their diesels gave them a staggering range of 10,000 nautical miles, enough to raid the South Atlantic or Indian Ocean and return without refueling. Their armament was formidable, 6 11-inch guns in 2 triple turrets, capable of firing shells heavier than anything carried by Allied cruisers. These were backed by 8 5.9-inch guns, light anti-aircraft batteries, and 2 sets of torpedo tubes. Armor protection was modest 80 millimeters on the Deutschland and Admiral Scheer and up to 100 millimeters on the Graf Spee, strong enough to defeat cruiser fire, but no match for a battleship broadside. The philosophy was clear: outgun anything that could catch them and outrun anything that could outgun them. On paper, they were perfect predators. Admiral Graf Spee, the newest of the class, Graf Spee, was commissioned in 1936. She represented the peak of the design, with improved armor and reliability. In the tense months before war, she cruised the Atlantic and Africa, training her crew for the commerce raiding role. When war broke out in September year 1939, Graf Spee was already in the South Atlantic. Between September and December, she sank or captured 9 merchant ships, over 50,000 tons of cargo bound for Britain. Her success forced the Royal Navy to reroute convoys and dispatch hunting groups. On the 13th of December, year 1939, she encountered such a force off the River Plate HMS Exeter, accompanied by the light cruisers HMS Ajax and HMNZS Achilles. The battle raged for hours. Graf Spee inflicted serious damage, crippling Exeter. But she herself suffered hits to her engine room and fire control systems. Captain Hans Langsdorff sought refuge in neutral Montevideo, Uruguay. Believing a powerful British fleet was closing in and unwilling to see his crew slaughtered, he made the agonizing choice. On the 17th of December, he ordered his ship scuttled just outside the harbor. As flames engulfed the vessel, she settled into the mud. Days later, Langsdorff took his own life. Graf Spee's career had lasted only a few months, yet her dramatic end became legend. The Royal Navy never finished Graf Spee with shells or torpedoes. Instead, through relentless pursuit, misinformation, and the illusion of overwhelming force, they forced her captain to scuttle the ship. She was sunk by Allied deception. The second ship, Admiral Scheer, was commissioned in 1934. She saw early action in the Spanish Civil War, bombarding the port of Almeria in 1937. Her greatest success came in late year 1940. Under Captain Theodore Cranky, she slipped into the Atlantic and embarked on a 161-day raiding cruise through the Atlantic and Indian Oceans. By April year 1941, she had sunk 17 merchant ships, totaling over 100,000 tons. It was the most successful commerce raid by any surface ship of the war. But her fortunes faded. In 1942, she operated in the Arctic, striking Soviet convoys in daring raids, but found few targets. Increasingly plagued by mechanical troubles, she was relegated to training duties in the Baltic. In April year 1945, docked in Kiel with much of her armament removed, Admiral Scheer was attacked by RAF bombers. Struck repeatedly, she capsized at her moorings. Her wreck was buried under rubble after the war, an ignoble end to Germany's most effective raider. It wasn't a sea battle that destroyed Admiral Scheer, but British air power. In April year 1945, RAF Lancaster bombers dropped tons of explosives onto Kiel Harbor. Caught defenseless, Scheer capsized under the weight of their bombs. She was sunk by Allied air supremacy. The lead ship, Deutschland, entered service in 1933. She too fought in Spain, where a Republican air attack in 1937 killed 31 of her crew. At the start of the war, she patrolled the North Atlantic, but achieved little, sinking just a few merchantmen before returning to port. In 1940, to avoid the embarrassment of a ship named Germany being sunk, she was renamed Lützow. Her career was plagued with misfortune. During the invasion of Norway, she was struck by coastal artillery and torpedoed by HMS Spearfish, forcing lengthy repairs. In 1941, another torpedo disabled her during an attempted Atlantic raid. She later operated in the Arctic, but her impact was limited. In December year 1942, she and the cruiser Admiral Hipper engaged convoy JW-51B at the Battle of the Barents Sea. Despite firing dozens of heavy shells, they failed to inflict serious losses. The failure infuriated Hitler, who briefly considered scrapping the surface fleet entirely. By year 1944, Lützow was reduced to a floating gun battery, firing her remaining guns in support of retreating German forces on the Baltic coast. In April year 1945, RAF bombers struck her at Swinemund. She was scuttled days before Germany's surrender. Raised by the Soviets in 1947, she was finally sunk as a target ship in the Baltic. First crippled by British submarines and aircraft, Lützow was finally finished by RAF heavy bombers in April 1945. Her crew scuttled her in shallow water, and the Soviets later sank her permanently. She was destroyed by Allied persistence from air and sea. The saga of Germany's pocket battleships ended in total defeat. Conceived in the 1932nd as treaty-busting commerce raiders, they did tie down Allied resources and cause disruption early in the war. Graf Spee terrified British shipping in 1939. Admiral Scheer's year 1940 cruise was a masterclass in raiding. Lützow proved tenacious, surviving hits that would have sunk many ships, but each was ultimately rendered obsolete. Air power, radar, and improved convoy tactics meant that no lone surface raider could survive long. By year 1945, all three were sunk or scuttled victims of a world where aircraft carriers and submarines had become the true predators of the seas. The pocket battleship was a bold experiment, half cruiser, half battleship, all compromise. For a brief moment, they threatened to change the balance of naval warfare. But history left them behind, their hulks rusting reminders that innovation without adaptability cannot survive the relentless tide of war.